in a second. By the way, let me quickly show you how what happened back then. Before November 7th, so 4 of the 5 canonical women were murdered already. October, no murders. But sometime before November 7th, he was arrested on suspicion. And then what happened is November 7th, what happened is they arrested him on gross indecency and indecent assault. That was basically homosexuality. He had 4 letters in his pockets from young men in London. So, you know, when you look at the, he was means, method, and opportunity, he was there throughout the entire murders. The letters showed that he was there throughout the entire murders. And so nobody saw the murders, so nobody could really be arrested. Remember, the writ of habeas corpus was there, meaning when you're arrested, you have 24 hours before you have to put that person up to the magistrate. You're either going to charge them or let them go. And they were really strict on that. So what they realized before they arrested him, they suspected him of possibly being Jack the Ripper. So what they did is, well, we can arrest them. We've got the goods on him doing gross indecency. So he was arrested right here for gross indecency. And then within 24 hours, he was in front of the magistrate. Well, this would be called a remand hearing. So when you're in front of the magistrate first, when you're received into custody, a remand hearing is this. You're going to have a committal hearing. So this was a police magistrate. The committal hearing was on November 14th. That is, are we going to commit this up to the judge, Central Criminal Court? Is it that serious? And so what the magistrate thought back here was, we're going to have a committal hearing. There's significant enough. But what they did was, we don't have any record of this anymore. For some reason, there was no record of it. But we know it happened, though. So in this case, the magistrate would have allowed bail. And Tumblety was a millionaire. So he always had, he had expensive jewelry in one pocket, diamonds and gold, and a bunch of cash in the other, never mixed. And so he would have had enough money to post any kind of bail. Then he was released before November 8th, and Mary Kelly was murdered November 9th. And so November 14th was a committal hearing, and what happened was how we know that he was offered bail is because November 16th he posted bail from this misdemeanor charge. We also know that November 19th, the grand jury returned a true bill, meaning there's enough goods there to convict. We agree with the magistrate, it's got to go to the judge, which was going to be November 20th. Well, Tumblety sneaked out of the country, by the way. On November 24th, he was seen in France. But he didn't sneak out because he knew that the Scotland Yard suspected him of Jack the Ripper, being Jack the Ripper. He didn't want to go to prison. That's why. So, in this case, he went, we have record of him taking money out of his New York bank account November 19th. His attorney was the one that was at the November 20th court date, not him. So November 19th, we see him, and he came with money, and then by November 24th, he's in Le Havre, France, on his way back to New York City. So he sneaked out November 24th. So that's kind of what's happening. So, 3 Scotland Yard officials mentioned Tumblety. One of them I talked about is, here's Little Chubb saying, to my mind, very likely one. And then Assistant Commissioner Robert Anderson was the man in charge of the Whitechapel murders, at least after the first couple. And what he did was, November 19th and 20th, they believed he was Tumblety. They didn't know Tumblety had absconded, sneaked out yet. He contacted chiefs of police in the United States asking for all information on Tumblety, the Ripper suspect Tumblety. And especially this one, Inspector Thomas Burns, which I'll talk about. And the last one is December 9th. This man showed up in Canada, in Halifax. What happened was he came to Canada, December 9th, and he was escorting a prisoner, Barnett, to Toronto. And so this guy, they asked him about Tumblety, and so he says that he did say he didn't believe he was Jack the Ripper, but all the same, I still want to interview him. Well, why would you want to interview him when the court case was postponed? The gross indecency court date was postponed till December 10th. That means you have absconded to nothing yet. The warrant for his arrest was December 10th. but it was November 24th when Scotland Yard saw him in France already. So how did they know that? Why were they following him? If it was just a mere gross indecency case, and he was free to do anything he wants until December 10th. Now, right here, that's December 10th. December 9th is when this guy was in Canada. And let me talk to you what happened when Tumblety got to America. So he sneaked out, and Chief Inspector Littlechild said that he was first seen in Boulogne, France, and the papers on December 1st said he was last seen in Havre. So he took the train here in Havre. Folkestone, you see how he traveled here. And by the way, he always took Liverpool back and forth to the States. And the big reason why is because his sister lived in Liverpool, or his niece at that time, because his sister passed. So his niece lived in, he had a niece that lived in Bath. Nobody knew that one, but he did. And we have some record of that too. A family story about this doctor, this quack doctor in the family that was arrested on suspicion. In their family, they have that story. So that is in Bath. But in this case, sneaked out. And then what Littlechild said was, but it is certain from this time the Ripper murders came to an end. So he sneaked out of the country and the murders stopped. So why did they not follow him then? The answer is they did. And this is where there was some challenges in the expert community, but I'm going to show you something today that I haven't shown anybody. It's going to be on that show coming up, but you guys can see this first. Don't tell anybody. So here's what happened. In the papers, it was talking about when he came on board, Tumblety got to the New York Harbor December 2nd. So waiting for him were two New York detectives that knew him by face. So Chief Inspector Burns in New York City admitted to the paper that Scotland Yard contacted him a week before. Now this is all before a warrant is out for his arrest on the gross indecency. So for some reason they're all talking about this guy coming over before that. If the gross indecency arrest was just to keep him off the streets, their biggest concern was he's Jack the Ripper. Now we can see why they took him so seriously. Not only was it two New York detectives that were waiting for him, there was a Scotland Yard detective there that followed him. And so in this case, that detective, and a couple examples here. So the problem is when he steps off the shore in New York, you can't extradite him back because it was a misdemeanor charge he's on. So what Chief Inspector Burns said is, Scotland Yard hands off, we'll keep an eye on him, but until you charge him with a federal offense or a felony, you don't get it. And so he was clear even in the papers with that. So, but December 3rd, most newspaper reporters didn't know where he sneaked off to, except two reporters did. They knew it was 79 East 10th Street. And that was because of, it looks like one of Inspector Burns' detectives told those two companies, New York World and New York Herald. And this Scotland Yard detective knew where he was. So that was December 3rd, because of the December 4th paper. So Tumblety gets to New York December 2nd. December 4th paper. In the paper, it says, in both the New York World and New York Herald, that there's this English detective right outside the window of Tumblety's looking for, let me see if I talk about it. So this is what was in the December 4 papers here. And it says, this English detective came over to get the chap that did it. So now Tumblety, who's an avid reader, knows Scotland Yard's right outside my window. What do you know, December 5th, he vanishes. He's gone in 2 days. Last year we found out where he was. Why? So this is important, and it's closer to us. But where he went was Waterloo. And how I know that is because what I've been doing is getting the family history, because that was one of my backgrounds is family history. So I'm trying to follow the family history of all of Tumblety's brothers and sisters. And a couple of the family members went from Rochester, moved to Waterloo, New York. And I have sworn testimony of Thomas Powerley, who's the son of that sister, living in Waterloo, saying that Tumblety, in the 1880s, when Tumblety was arrested in Toronto for sodomy, because he loved young men. And so what happened was when he was in trouble, he'd sneak off to Waterloo. Well, now 1888 comes, he sneaks out, and he's in Waterloo. How I know that is because the coolest thing now, because of Chronicling America and some other newspapers.com, all these archives are being scanned, these newspapers. Well, Waterloo did that. And so what happened is that little paper talked about a story about some of their women in the evening were being accosted. And by the way, Francis Tumblety's in town. How coincidental. And so what happened, why that's important is because what this says is that Inspector Andrews that came to Canada, what this paper reports, New York World reports that when he got to Canada, he got new orders. After you drop off Barnett, now search for the killer in America who came 3 weeks ago. And that's what this says. You know, left England to this side 3 weeks ago. That was Tumblety, to the day. And so, to find the murder in America. Well, all the experts before this believe, well, that's all wrong because he was in New York. They didn't have to find him. And by the way, so this right here talks about this. So what happens is if you look at the, so the orders were about December 9th or 10th because he got to the shores December 9th, so by December 10th. So remember, December 5th is when he sneaked off to Waterloo. So the orders to find him came 5 days later. It kind of matches temporally. So what happened is as he went from Halifax through to Toronto, so December 18th, he was finished with his business in Toronto, and then when he was at Montreal, December 20th, he was interviewed, and if you notice, look at New York City is due south, train ride from there, and so this would be the go, no-go point. If there were truly new orders, he would be from Montreal, he would be going south, and then he would go this way to Halifax to take a ship. Now he came on the SS Sarnia December 9th. So the assumption with experts is he's leaving December 22nd on Sarnia. Well, there's another one, the Peruvian was leaving December 24th. But if you change your orders, when you're Scotland Yard, you can go on any ship leaving. So what's happened is a lot of experts said it can't be true because if he was in Montreal December 20th and the ship left December 22nd, there would have been not enough time. Therefore, the article's wrong, guys. The reporters are lying. Fake news. Started way back then. So that's what they've been trying to say, maybe. Until this happened. What happened was when Inspector Andrews was in Toronto, here's the Scotland Yard inspector. Jack the Ripper murders have just gone through. Armchair detectives there, not even police officers, they're talking to Andrews and they're saying, you guys have it all wrong. You guys can't find anybody. To find Jack the Ripper, you got to do this. And that was very condescending to him. So he's telling the Montreal reporter about that experience he had. So what does he say? I quite expect a similar experience in New York. Doesn't that mean you're going to New York? That's the only thing that means. That Canadian paper has no dog in the fight, was not going to try to lie about it. They're just repeating what this guy is saying. So my point is, this is December 20th. They still didn't know where he was. He's still hiding out. That Scotland Yard detectives there, they would have cabled to him and say, I mean, remember he in Toronto said that he wanted to interview Tumblety. And then so they could have, once they're there, charged him with some other kind of felony offense, especially with the Irish Fang stuff, because there's some possible connection with Tumblety there. So Tumblety was just out there. So they didn't know where he was. And so that order to find him in New York, he's still not around. So he couldn't interview him. So maybe Andrews didn't go and he left and he caught the ride with Sarnia. Everything's fine. Well, that's not the point. The point is his intentions were to go to New York. Here's why that's important. That means Scotland Yard took Tumblety extremely seriously when they are ordering this guy to go there to help find the murder in America. So that is new, and that's going to be coming out. So that'll be fun. And then, so, now,